Would Cade Cunningham have saved this season for the Detroit Pistons if he had played? We'll talk about that in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Kuka Hill. You can find me over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you are listening to this on. And today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster and easier. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. So I'm recording this on February 7th. We are officially 2 days away from the trade deadline. Things are heating up across the league. Obviously had that Kyrie trade. Later in the podcast, we're going to talk about a potential trade with the New York Knicks, with rumors swirling around that the Pistons are again, it feels like the 20th time in the last 2 years, but they are again interested in Cam Reddish. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But first, I'm really excited to talk about this topic we're about to talk about. And I just want to give credit to where I came up with this topic and what made me want to talk about it. I don't want to just, steal content, whatever. I saw Amari Sankofa. He's the beat writer for the Detroit Free Press. He tweeted out, just to give credit here, he tweeted out, "Surprised people are still talking about this season as though Cade didn't get hurt. Understand the frustration, but this isn't a typical year 3 for the rebuild." So this is where I got the idea from to talk about this. And you guys remember, you guys heard the intro. Would Cade Cunningham have saved this season for the Pistons? I feel so many different ways about this that I look at this. All these notes. I had to write down all these notes. For those of you guys on YouTube, you guys see. I'm all over the place. I have so many feelings with this. So I'm going to go one by one here to make sure I don't miss anything. So do I think that Cade would have saved this season? No. I don't think Cade would have saved this season. I honestly think if you think that, we'll get later on in this segment, I'll say what I think or why I think those who are saying that. But I don't think Cade would have saved this season. And this is why. So let's go down the list. First of all, their biggest issue on this team is wing defense. They have some of the worst wing defense, if not the worst wing defense in the entire NBA, with Bojan Bogdanovic and Saddiq Bey. They started those two guys for a while. They still play a lot of minutes together. That defense on the wings, if you're going to have that bad of a defense in your wing room, one of the more important positions in the NBA to have some kind of defense at, you're not going to be good. I don't care what Cade could have done. Cade's not a wing defender. Cade's not fixing that issue. And those last words I just said, Cade's not fixing that issue. Make sure you guys put that in the back of your head for a second, because we're going to come back to that later on in the segment. But Cade's not fixing that. There's nothing Cade could have done healthy to fix that. Moving on, lack of defense at the 5 also is one of their biggest issues, and Cade's not fixing that either. Jalen Duren is really the only real 5 on this team, and he's a rookie. He's not very good at defense. You can say he's made improvements as a rookie defensively. Of course he has. But as a rookie 5, what he's actually done this year, when you compare it to actual NBA 5, not just rookies, but year 3, year 7, year 9 guys, he hasn't been a good defender this year. He's been a bad defender according to NBA terms. Okay? Cade's not fixing that. And the only other person that could have helped with that is Nerlens Noel, and they've just came to an agreement that he's not going to play this year. So unless you're telling me that if Cade's healthy and Nerlens Noel is going to all of a sudden start playing because Cade's healthy, I don't buy that either. Let's move on to the next point. The next point I want to make is that, actually, let me say this first. This sounds negative, and I know I told you guys we're going to try to be super positive on the podcast. It actually isn't. Just stay to the end of the segment. You guys will see where I'm going with this. It actually finishes off in a positive note. So just follow me until the end. So Cade's not fixing any of those things. Obviously, they're one of the worst teams in the entire NBA defensively. They have the second worst defensive rating in the entire NBA. They are 3 points behind 27th in defensive rating. That's terrible. That's terrible. So they're one of the worst defensive teams in the NBA, and Cade's not fixing that. The one area that Cade might help with It's the fact that they are the 7th worst, according to the statistics. At least I checked 2 weeks ago. I don't know where to find it, but I found it 2 weeks ago. And we talked about it a little bit on the podcast, that they were at that point the 7th worst clutch team in NBA history. If you believe Cade could have helped in the clutch time, you can make that argument. Cade was pretty okay as a clutch guy as a rookie. I could see that possibly happening. But then I also would say expecting a second-year Cade Cunningham to absolutely carry your team in the clutch is asking way too much of a second-year player. I just don't think that's reasonable to expect that he would swing things that much in his second season in the clutch for this team. Then I want to move to that. I feel like a lot of people keep trying to pitch this idea, and it's not fair to Cade at all. It's not fair to Cade that Cade is like this perfect player, and he already is the star that would have solved everything. Just like we're seeing Stu go through his growth pains, we're seeing Sadiq go through his growing pains, we're seeing Killing go through the growing pains, Jay and Ivy go through growing pains. Cade had to go through some growing pains too. He was going to have growing pains this year. We saw it at the beginning of this year. He had some growing pains. Cade is not like this perfect player who's already in his prime, 25, 26 years old. The dude's 21. He's still extremely young. He's nowhere near a finished product. So the idea that you could just plant like a perfected Cade Cunningham with this team, he would have been struggling at times too. He would have had things he had to improve on, and that's fine. But I feel like at this point, people are putting a little bit too much pressure or are expecting a little bit too much of a guy who hasn't even played. But they're just putting a little bit too much expectation if you believe that second-year Cade Cunningham just wasn't going to have any growing pains like the rest of his teammates around his age and just didn't have things to improve on either. So unless Cade was perfect, I don't see how he helps in that regard either. I think he also would have had things he had to improve on. He also would have went through rough stretches. So that's the other thing. And then the last point I want to make before we get to why this is actually spinning into a positive is that I don't think people truly understand this. Cade didn't just break his leg or something. He didn't just break his foot, break his elbow, or something like that. He didn't just have a freak injury like that you could say, oh, if he didn't have that and we had healthy Cade Cunningham, who knows what would have happened. It's not one of those. Cade had been injured. He was hurt before this year. He was hurt last year. Apparently, he's been dealing with this since high school. So it's not one of those things you can just say, oh, healthy Cade Cunningham. He was never healthy. So you're assuming, what if you're going to do this hypothetical, what you're assuming is that Cade Cunningham would have played this whole year instead of getting the surgery on that bad leg. He would have played with that shin injury throughout the whole year. You can't just say, oh, what if he never had the shin injury when he's been dealing with it since high school? It's not one of those freak injuries you can just say, okay, we'll just take that away and he actually was able to play this year. He would have been fine. If he would have played this year, he would have been playing on a bad leg. So not only are we, I feel like some people are assuming that it would have been like a perfect Cade Cunningham. They're also assuming that Cade, all of a sudden, this leg stuff would just went away. It wasn't a freak injury. It's something he's been dealing with. It had to get solved, whether it was in season or after the year. So it would have been an unhealthy Cade. It wouldn't have been 100% Cade either way. So that's another argument there that I have. And then lastly, to turn this thing into a positive here, and just follow with me here, I feel like for those that are assuming, I wrote this whole paragraph down. I want to say it quote for quote. By assuming this season would just be okay if Cade was playing, ignores all evidence that say otherwise, everything that we've seen that says otherwise, the roster construction that says otherwise, and it seems like more of a way to smooth things over and try to paint those who put this roster together, who are coaching this roster, and everyone that had anything to do with this roster for this season in a better light, rather than just be truthful about what this was this year. And that's why I really disagree, is that you need to be truthful about what we've seen this year. Cade's not solving these issues I just went through with you guys. And it's also way too unfair for Cade to expect him to carry all this. However, the positive thing about this is that at the end of the day, the goal for this season that I told you guys before the year was reached. The goal was reached by this happening. Now, I'm not going to say I'm happy Cade got hurt. Obviously, we wish Cade was never dealing with this leg injury. We wish that we could have watched Cade play every game, obviously. So I don't think I need to explain. I think you guys know what I'm saying when I'm saying I'm actually happy that they've had this happen, because this allows fans to be able to put pressure on the front office, because they now see how far away this team is, how far away they are from putting the right team around Cade Cunningham. There's no more fool's gold. They see it for themselves. Everyone sees what they're lacking and how far they are away. And the goal before this season, like I told you guys, was to figure out who fits around Cade, who fits on this team, who actually has improved. Maybe the idea of who can fit next to Cade hasn't been answered, but I still think even though Cade's not been playing, you can kind of see where guys are growing as NBA players and see if that archetype fits. I think you can still do that even if Cade's not on the floor. But nonetheless, if you want to remove that part from it, you're still seeing which guys got better, which guys have improved enough, which guys we want to bring back as that archetype, or can they fit an archetype that we need? Are they making the necessary improvements that we need to see to move on from them or to keep them around? I still think that this year, honestly, even more with Cade out than we would have seen with Cade healthy, you got those answers. We're getting those answers. So not only do you get to see how far this team is away, everyone is very truthful. I feel like the majority of people are truthful now about what needs to happen, and a lot of fans are putting pressure on this team to do what they need to do to get Cade the right people for next season and beyond. But you're also seeing which guys of this young core, or, I guess if you think they should move on, maybe they're not part of the young core, but which of these young guys actually can stay and be a part of this team moving forward. And to wrap this up, and this is a longer segment, to wrap it up, my main point that I want to have with all this is Cade going to save all? Was Cade going to save all this? No, he wasn't. And it's completely unfair to him, in my opinion, to act like he would have. He wasn't going to save any of this. He wasn't going to add like 10 extra wins to this. He had growing to do himself. He had to become a better outside shooter. He had to deal with contact. And this is not dogging Cade. Cade's amazing. He's going to be the franchise player. I think he can be an MVP one day. But he's in his second year. He would have been in his second year. He had stuff he was going to grow through as well. He wasn't going to be perfect. And a lot of the flaws on this team, acting like Cade would have made up for those, is trying to make it seem like those flaws aren't actually there. And I don't understand why people try to do that. We need to be truthful about what this roster is. We need to be truthful about who needs to move and who needs to stay and who fits around Cade. And more importantly, what they need to put around Cade that they don't have right now to make this team a contender in years to come and have this team make a jump next year to compete for the play and to compete for the playoffs. And I don't know if we would have got that brutal honesty if Cade would have played. So that's where I wrap up with that, man. Let me know what you guys think about that in the comment section down below or over on Twitter. That was a long segment, but I was really hyper for it. I was really excited to talk about it. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. When we come back, though, trade deadline's in 2 days. By the time you guys listen to this, it'll be 1 day. The New York Knicks have been rumored to be interested in some of the Pistons players. Sounds like the Pistons are interested in Cam Reddish yet again for like the 100th time we've heard that they are interested over the last 2 years. We're going to talk about that when we come back. Should they be interested in Reddish? You guys will see when we come back. But first, I got to tell you guys about one of our sponsors, LinkedIn Jobs. As a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 all depends on the team members you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experiences to help you achieve your goals. LinkedIn Jobs helps you quickly attract qualified candidates to your open jobs with targeting tools that go beyond resume data by using insights from your job post, company, and their 875 million member profiles to put your job in front of the most qualified candidates available. Identify the most qualified candidates on LinkedIn Jobs and connect with them fast and for free. LinkedIn Jobs makes it easier to screen and rate applicants based on your job qualifications, all on one platform. And what's a better way to start off 2023 than getting the most perfect qualified candidate for your small business? It's why small businesses rank LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates you want to talk to faster and easier. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button at the YouTube channel if you haven't already, or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you are listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. I don't know what's up with this episode tonight. I think it's because I just got done working out. Went and worked out, took a shower. I elevated, actually, guys, real quick, just to let you guys know real quick. I elevated my box jump today. Maybe that's why I'm super, super hyped, man. I feel I can jump out the building now. But I'm super hyper for this podcast, man. So let's get into it. So with 2 days ago, as of this recording, for the trade deadline, there's been a lot of rumors, obviously, with Bojan Bogdanovic. There's been rumors with Alec Burks. There's been rumors with Nerlens Noel. We've even heard Saddiq Bey's name mentioned. And now it says that the Pistons, we have heard that the Pistons have held talks with the Knicks on Cam Reddish. Now, Cam Reddish is a name that I feel like we've heard the Pistons be interested in for, I feel like, years. I feel like every year we hear about the Pistons being interested in Cam Reddish. And this is coming from Ian Begley, the New York NBA insider. He says the Knicks and the Detroit Pistons have more recently had talks about a potential Reddish deal. So, and we also know that the Knicks are interested in Saddiq Bey. So could there be something brewing right there? Before I get into some of the trades that I've drawn up, I just want to give you guys an idea of what Cam Reddish is. Cam Reddish is he's an extremely polarizing player because he has a ton of potential. He has a lot of raw talent. He's a very raw player still. He's 23 years old. He fits the mold for a perfect wing body with the athleticism. You'd think that he would be like the perfect wing in today's NBA, but he just hasn't lived up to those expectations. Through his career thus far, he started off in Atlanta. He's now with New York. Through his career, he's a 39% shooter from the field, 32% from beyond the arc. Although over the last 2 years, though, I know last year he shot 35% from deep, 40% from the field, and then this year in the limited time that he played, he was shooting 45% from the field, 55% on twos, which is actually really damn good, but only 30% from deep, and his defense has been very inconsistent thus far into his career. Yet, a lot of teams still remain really interested in him because, like I said, he has the perfect body for a wing player. He has a lot of untapped potential. And as long as you have that kind of body and you have that kind of untapped potential, there's going to be teams out there that continue to believe, well, if I got my hands on that guy, we could get it out of him. And there's been, Atlanta thought they could do it. I feel like Atlanta might have moved on to him because they had to pick somebody and they're trying to win. So they moved him to New York. And now New York's also been trying to win, and he's also playing under Tibbs, which I don't know if is a great fit. My opinion of Cam Reddish is he hasn't lived up to expectations, but I also believe, and I know people disagree with this, but this is just my feeling on it. He has a lot of improvement to do, but I also feel like he's also been in situations that have been trying to win, and he hasn't really been given the opportunity to go out there and make mistakes, play through them, and have that kind of freedom because teams that he's been on haven't really been trying to do that. They've usually been trying to win, and they can't afford to have those kind of things happening. So that's just my opinion on it, though I also obviously understand that he hasn't lived up to expectations. He hasn't really put a lot on tape, and he hasn't had a lot of value. He doesn't have a lot of value at this point. So what would a trade between the New York Knicks and the Detroit Pistons look like? Well, I have two drafted trades here. So let's go ahead and go through them. And for those of you guys on YouTube, again, you guys will get to see the trade on the screen. Let me pull that up for you guys. And of course, those of you guys who listen on the podcast, I will make sure to loud, obviously, what these trades are. So the first one I have, this one is Cam Reddish and the Detroit Pistons first round pick that they own for Saddiq Bey. I think this one, let me move this out the way real quick. I'm sorry. I honestly, I'm not going to lie to you guys, man. I think this one has a serious chance of happening. I really do. We just heard earlier in the week, or last week it was, that the Knicks are really interested in Saddiq Bey. We've heard for years that the Pistons are interested in Cam Reddish. And you can't tell me otherwise. I have to believe that Troy Weaver has been doing everything he can and has been talking to the Knicks all the time about ways to get that first round pick back. They can't make any trades involving first round picks. That is the Pistons. They're not in danger of losing their pick because it's heavily protected. They'll probably never lose the first round pick. It'll probably eventually turn into seconds whenever it does convey, which means the pick itself is not that valuable to the Knicks, I believe. It's not that valuable to the Knicks, and I don't think it's that valuable to any other team that would have it, the pick itself. However, it's really valuable to teams like the Knicks and any other team that holds it if they are trying to use it as leverage over the Pistons because they know it means much more to the Pistons than it does them. The Knicks know that this first-round pick is probably never going to be a first-round pick for them. They know it's probably going to convey into second-round picks, I believe, in 2027. They know that. They're not expecting this first-round pick to ever become their own first. But what they do know is that the Pistons can't make any deals. involving first-round picks because of it. They know they can't trade future first-round picks because of it, which that means it takes them out of the running for any star that comes out and wants out, and they can't make any real big-time deals in the process of trying to take this next step, which they know they probably want to do. So it's leverage for the Knicks more than anything. This is my evaluation of it. They know that pick's never going to be theirs, but they know they can hold it over Detroit and say, hey, we know this matters a lot to you guys. You're going to have to pay up for it. And by doing that, the Pistons give up Saddiq Bey. And look, Saddiq Bey is better than Cam Reddish. Cam Reddish hasn't put a lot on tape. I like the idea of Cam Reddish. I would take the chance on him. I'm actually really interested in him. I'd like to see what he looked like with the Pistons. And again, I think he has a lot of untapped potential. But that first-round pick is so valuable for the Pistons to find a way to get back so they can have that flexibility in trades that it might cost them Saddiq Bey. They're not going to get that first-round pick back for Corey Joseph, Hamidou Diallo. Like, that's not going to happen. And with how valuable I believe it is for them to have that first-round pick back, you get Cam Reddish in return, but the real asset here is that first-round pick. The Knicks may ask for Saddiq Bey, who they really like. And I think that would have to be something the Pistons would have to seriously consider doing. Because that not having that first-round pick, it really, really handicaps them with what they can do in the trade market. Especially if they are truthful with what they want with taking this next step, trying to improve, trying to bring someone in and, eventually take this jump. They're going to need that flexibility, and they don't have it right now. So some way, somehow, they have to get it. Here's a chance right here. There's a player that you're interested in. There's a player they're interested in, except they can attach your first-round pick back. I think it's a good trade. I'm not going to lie. I know a lot of people would hate to see Saddiq Bey go, but that first-round pick is so valuable, I feel like this is a fair trade on both sides. I think both teams would agree to this. I'm not going to lie. I think there's a good chance this happens. Now, the next trade I have is not including Saddiq Bey, and it's not including that first-round pick, because that first-round pick is pretty valuable, and I don't know if the Pistons are going to be able to get it from the Knicks. However, Cam Reddish doesn't have a lot of value, so if the Pistons just want Cam Reddish, then I think the next best deal for that, if you're just wanting Cam Reddish, you offer them Hamidou Diallo and their second-round pick from 2026 back to them, and you call it a day. You send Diallo back to New York, where he's from. He's playing really well. He may even play for the Knicks. He's been causing a lot of disruption defensively. Actually, there was a stat earlier that I retweeted on Twitter. I believe he's 7th in the NBA in deflections per game, or per 36. He's averaging 4.1 deflections per game defensively, or per 36 again. And Tibbs loves himself some defenders, some guys that can make some havoc on defense. I don't think Diallo is a great on-ball defender, but I think he does disrupt things. I think Thibodeau will really like him. And the Pistons get Cam Reddish. I think that right there is also a fair deal for both sides. So those are the two trades I think could happen if the Pistons actually want Cam Reddish. I'm trying to be fair to both sides. I'm not trying to, make the Pistons steal something from the Knicks, try to have the Knicks steal something from the Pistons. I'm trying to be realistic. And I think these two trades I came up with are actually pretty realistic. And I think these two trades are fair to both sides. I think both teams would like those trades. So let me know what you guys think about it. I know you guys are going to hate the idea of getting rid of Saddiq Bey. I know you guys are going to be completely against it. I get it. But at the very least, just think about what I was describing to you and why they would do it. And then after you think about it, just tell me if you can see it at all. Take away your fandom. Just tell me if you can see that. Let me know that in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Kukahill. When we come back, I just want to talk about what we've seen from a certain young player over the last month or so. I think we've seen enough sample size to have a conversation about this. You guys will see who I'm talking about and what I'm talking about when we come back. But first, I got to tell you guys about one of our sponsors, FanDuel. This year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party, I know I'm going to have it at my Super Bowl party, is FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're #1 in sportsbooks in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Download FanDuel now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with no sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't even win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from money line to point spreads to who will score the first touchdown. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. And best of all, you can get paid your winnings instantly. And Super Bowl Sunday, few days away, I'm telling you guys, I'm feeling the Eagles. I think that Eagles pass rush is going to get to Mahomes and the Chiefs. I'm thinking I'm going to take the Eagles money line. I think that's feeling good, man. I think that's what I think you guys should do. I know I'm going to do it over at FanDuel. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons, hit that subscribe button, or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you are listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. All right, so a few podcasts ago, I think it may have been even last podcast, I said I think fans need to get better at, and even myself, need to get better at not micro-analyzing every single game of the young guys. There's going to be a bad game. There's going to be a good game. There's going to be a bad game. There's going to be a good game. That's the process of young guys. That's the process of basketball. Basketball is a very fluid game. You can't just – we need to do a better job at not micro-analyzing every single game. Now, saying that still, I feel like this is a pretty long sample size to talk about, to be concerned about, and deserves talk. And I'm talking about Isaiah Stewart. Now, Isaiah Stewart started off this season shooting really well from the floor, shooting really well from deep. Way better than any of us could have imagined. Way better than I thought. You guys remember before the season, I said that I thought it was more realistic that he would be a 32% three-point shooter than he would be getting close to 37% three-point shooter. I believe those are the exact numbers I used. I may be a little off both ways, but I believe those are the exact numbers I said on the podcast before the year. And for the first 20 games of the year, he was shooting 36% from deep on 4 attempts. Way better than I thought he was going to, and we gave him a ton of credit on the podcast for how he was shooting the basketball to start the season. Gave him a ton of credit. He was playing really well to start the season on that side of the floor, playing the 4 position. Now, since then, since that game, the 20th game he played in, over the last 24, he's shooting 26% from beyond the arc. 26%. And it gets worse. Over the last 19, he's at 20%. You keep shortening the sample size as it gets worse and worse. Over the last 10 games, he's at 14%. And then if you just go over the last 6 games, he was barely shooting them. The first 3 games over the last 6 games, he only attempted 1. And then, of course, over the last 2 games, he got up he got up 15 threes in the last 2 games. I don't know if he should ever be getting up that many. But yeah, my point is that he's struggling. He's struggling really bad from beyond the arc. And it's a long enough sample size that you need to talk about it. We need to be talking about it and wondering, was the start of the year a fluke? Is he going to be able to fight through it? If you guys remember at the beginning of the year, I said that I like analyzing the players by quarters. And we did that. The first quarter of the year, we came back and looked at it. This is another quarter of the season, the next 23 or so games. And over the next quarter of the year, he's sunk badly in three-point shooting. He went bad into the water there. And it's fair to question, was it a fluke to start the year off? Is he going to be able to bounce back? Or is this closer to the actual shooter that he is? It's fair to ask those questions. We don't have the answers for those yet. We have the rest of the season to see how it goes. But it's 100% fair to start asking those questions. And it's hurting. It doesn't just hurt Stu, obviously, because he needs to see that improvement, and he needs that to be a part of his game as a player. But it's also hurting the rest. It hurts the rest of the team when he's on the floor and he's shooting this badly and teams start to straight up disrespect him. The Boston Celtics were just flat out not guarding Stu this past game. Stu got 7 threes up. He missed all 7 of them. But you want to know the reason why he got 7 threes up? Because Al Horford was sitting in the paint, and every time the Pistons kicked out to him, he had 10 to 15 space between the next guy. And like, as much as we don't want him getting up 10 threes, I mean, what exactly is he supposed to do when he catches the ball at the three-point line and there's 10 feet between him and the next defender? I mean, he has to shoot it almost. Like, he almost has to. He doesn't have a choice at that point. You just want to see him start to hit them. So, again, we're not ruling it for sure anything, whether he's actually a good shooter or if this is actually who he is. We don't know yet. What we do know is that it's a long enough sample size for us to start questioning whether the stuff we saw at the beginning of the year is actually something that he could sustain, and is it something that we actually can believe is a part of his game? Something that we can ask. And there is one other thing that we have to mention, though. I will mention this. I don't know how much of a factor it is right now, but earlier, I believe this month or last month, January, the beginning of January, I think he dealt with a little bit of shoulder soreness. He missed 3 games and came back and he was playing. I don't know how much that could be affecting him, but even before that, and then also you could say that maybe it was affecting him before he started missing games. Who knows? I guess we don't know when the shoulder started messing with him, but I do know that the 3-point shooting was going down before he missed games, and it's went even worse down after he came back. So I feel like it's something that we actually were seeing start to trend down beforehand. I don't know how much the shoulder is playing into it, but I'm not going to sit and deny that it could be playing a part of it. All I'm going to say is that we need to be watching for it, and we have to watch how this plays out, because it's a serious progression point in his game, and it could have major implications on where his place is on this team moving forward, depending on which route he ends up going for the rest of the year. But just keep your eye out on that, and just let's see what happens. So that's all I've got for you guys today, though, on today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Thank you guys for making us your first listen, free and available on all your podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button at the YouTube channel, Locked On Pistons. Leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you are listening to this on. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Heck, maybe there might be a Pistons trade that we can talk about by the next time you guys hear from me. Who knows? But until then, stay safe, go Pistons. And until then, peace out.